Welcome, everyone, to the House of Hustle podcast on Sports Radio 810. We are presented, as always, by Charlie Hustle. I am your host, Jarrett Sutton, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Stephen St. John. It is finals week. We have reached the NBA Finals. We're very excited to discuss the NBA Finals. But first, Charlie Hustle, thank you for I got some Mizzou swag as sort of like a wedding gift.
Oh, yeah?
From Charlie Hustle. And so big shout out to the House of Hustle crew.
He's all grown up.
All grown up. It's all you were there.
Yes.
It was a special weekend. So, but yeah, ready to discuss some NBA Finals and look forward to a heck of a series that's coming up.
So charliehustle.com if you want to check out that Mizzou gear, whatever school that you follow. Charliehustle.com. I have a beautiful Nigerian Nightmare Christian Okoye t-shirt that I recently got from Charlie Hustle, and I wore it in front of Christian Okoye, and it went over very well. He said, "I like your shirt."
I'm actually flying the Charlie Hustle heart flag outside of our house, and it is fantastic. It was one purchase I really wanted to get was the Charlie Hustle flag, so I'm flying that proudly.
By the way, congratulations on your marriage. Like you said, I was at the wedding with my wife, and I was sitting at a very basketball-friendly table with J.T. Tiller, former Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year, also Phil Flip Pressey, one of the best point guards in Mizzou history, and then Matt Zimmerman, who was assistant coach at Mizzou under Mike Anderson and now works for the University of Arkansas, and then later on Lawrence Bowers, who was somewhat of a troublemaker at our table, which was very interesting. And so we had a lot of fun, man. And everyone remembers J.T. Tiller and what a great defensive player he was. And this is, that's the kind of player I love, right?
Yep.
Man, he was so much fun to watch. But I had a discussion with one of my buddies because I sent him a picture of Phil Pressey. And my son Phil St. John used to love Phil Pressey to the point when he was playing and I was coaching him at St. Gabe's, he just called me Flip. Flip St. John, like Flip Pressey. But, I think people forget how good he was.
Oh, totally agree.
Like how good. Because I think about some of the dumb things I think about, like the most underappreciated players, like of the different teams that I watch, or the different teams I've covered or follow. And I feel like James Franklin will always be one of the most underappreciated quarterbacks in Mizzou history, especially when you see the level of success that they had with him at quarterback the year that they went to the SEC championship game and was in it with Auburn right until the end, but they couldn't stop the run because they wouldn't make adjustments defensively. But this is a basketball podcast, and we're not doing that. But Flip Pressey was I still think, one of the most underappreciated players, basketball players. I think probably if there would have been more postseason success, he would have been looked upon differently. But what a player. And just seeing him reminded me how much I used to love watching him play point.
Yeah, he had eyes in the back of his head, really. It was kind of a running joke with us of just Phil could see things nobody else could see. He used to just put defenders on skates. He would just twist up defenders sometimes where they just didn't know where. Turning guys around off crossovers, his speed with the ball in transition. He was also a very good defender. He had very quick hands. Was great at getting steals. But Phil, from our standpoint, he was 2 years younger than us, and I remember his recruiting visit when he came into Columbia, and I don't know if they're still doing this now, but we got to play pickup, and that was part of the recruiting visit. Players had the option to play, so it was always sort of like you can play if you want, but it was really sort of a test to see, will guys play with us in pickup, and it was usually in the summer and the fall period. Phil comes to campus, and we knew he was a highly touted recruit. We knew the relationship with Mike Anderson. So I ended up getting on Phil Pressey's team, and he's got braces. He's like small, tiny. I joke with him all the time now. He was high school Phil Pressey, and comes in, and he must have had like 18 assists in this pickup run. And I was just like spotting up, and he was finding me left and right. And our team stayed on the floor the entire day. We were on the floor an hour and a half, and Marcus and Kim and a lot of guys were very, very heated about losing to Phil. But I think we all knew at that point, like, if we could get Phil Pressey and sign him. And I remember being in Kansas City. We were at Kate's Kitchen in the Northland.
Delicious.
Me, Kim English are sitting there, and Kim looks across from me and goes, "We just got the text. Phil's committed." and that was a great morning. Phil was, I think he's the best point guard in Mizzou history. I'm biased with that because I just think he had such a different dimension of playmaking. He was the best passer, and we had the best passing team my senior year. And all of that was really stemmed from Phil Pressey. And congrats to Phil, too. He's going to be moving on and taking a job with the Boston Celtics, so he's going back where he started his NBA career. Really, he bounced around, but really his time in the NBA was spent with the Boston Celtics, so he's going back. He's going to be working in player development, and I think he's got a bright future in terms of being a coach one day. So congrats to Phil.
Speaking of the Celtics, before we preview the NBA Finals, let's wrap up the Eastern Conference Finals because I still am not sure what I saw. Like, I didn't think the Heat were going to jump out to a 3-0 lead, and then the Celtics looked like they quit in Game 3, so I didn't think they were going to come back and win 3 in a row. And then after they lost, the Heat lost in the fashion that they did in Game 6 and that buzzer-beating putback, I'm thinking, man, they're not going to bounce back and go up to Boston and win. But then I watched and this is what I want to ask you about, I watched the post-game press conference with Coach Spo, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they asked him about it. He goes, we can't wait to play Game 7. We wish we could play Game 7 right now. And I know that it's easy to say this now that they won Game 7, but just that was the right answer. That was the right demeanor.
Yep.
He had already just put Game 6 behind him, and it's like he was showing the confidence in his team. Where, at least to me, watching that, and I'm sure I'm a media guy taking too much away from a press conference, but it seemed like he knew that they should have won that game. He knew that they're the better team, and they wanted to hurry up, just play again.
Yeah.
They couldn't wait to play Game 7. And then when that game started, it looked like they were the team that couldn't wait to play Game 7, and they had Boston on their heels, and Boston never recovered. And so I was so impressed with the leadership that he showed, and then the way that team came out in Game 7 on the road in a hostile environment and punched Boston in the mouth, and Boston never recovered.
No, and I think Coach Spo, coaches use the media sometimes, as you know, of sending a message to their team. I think there's something to be said there, but I do think just the way the Miami Heat, and we've talked about this a lot, of just their championship pedigree in terms of the culture that they have. They're built off toughness. And I think they thought they let one slip away, and they had a chance to close the series in 6. So they know they got to go on the road to Boston and win Game 7. And they started the game like I thought they would start the game. Jason Tatum's injury is a part of this conversation, but the Miami Heat played with a fearlessness to them all throughout Game 7. They just did not let go of the rope. Foot was on the gas, locked in, focused. I just thought they executed across the board through those 4 quarters and end up going to Boston and getting a big win. Not easy to do. Game 7 in Boston after you were up 3-0 and you're on the verge of history.
Boston dropped a lot of home games.
They did, playoffs. And they also had these moments too where like it's not just Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown that's part of this, but moments where they lay an egg offensively, and they the Celtics score 84 or something like that. Yeah, 84, the lowest scoring output of the season, regular season, postseason combined in a Game 7. So they were not that good. Jaylen Brown said it in his postgame. Speaking of postgame after Game 7, that they failed to really meet the moment. And I think that's Jaylen Brown taking it. I appreciate it because he had 8 or 9 turnovers and really struggled to take care of the ball, and was they obviously had to play different after Tatum got hurt,
right.
And so Jaylen had to take the forefront and almost like switched roles. And I think Jaylen really struggled with that. And
He
did. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's a part of a Game 7. And I think that's what's so interesting about, the playoffs when you get in these moments. Coach Spo has been in these moments, right? And you see it from a coaching standpoint tactically and his messaging and, I mean, just his roster all the way through down to Udonis Haslem, right, in terms of having veterans. Jimmy Butler gets a lot of this. Bam Adebayo is a huge part of this series in getting through this Celtics series. And obviously they're doing this without Tyler Hero. When we talk about injuries, Tyler Hero hasn't been on the floor for them and is a huge part of what they are. So how cool to see an 8 seed in the finals. And this is the second time it's happened. A chance for Miami, and I think it would be so cool for Eric Spoelstra to win a title now that LeBron and Wade and those guys are gone. And I think it would add another piece to his, resume as a head coach and all the success he's had to win one. I mean, another one for Pat Riley would be pretty amazing too. So this story of the Miami Heat, I think, is bigger than what the Celtics, had. And the Celtics probably on paper had more talent, probably a little bit more star power. But you just can't sleep on the Miami Heat. The Miami Heat, as an 8 seed, they're on the verge of elimination twice in the play-in before they even got to the playoffs. They lost one of their play-in games. So for them to get through this and be where they're at, I think it's great for the league because it shows the parity of the league we're getting to and just across the board the talent that's in this league. So if you can get in the playoffs, you have a chance, and I think that's what makes this so intriguing.
So on paper, it doesn't look like a great matchup, right?
Right.
Denver is the third largest favorite in the finals over the past 20 seasons. But Denver, this group of players, they haven't been in the finals.
Right.
And this is crazy. Miami's making its 7th finals appearance since 2006, which is the most in the NBA in that span. Golden State is next with 6. 5 of Miami's playoff rotation players, Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, Kyle Lowry, Kevin Love, and Duncan Robinson, have previous finals experience. And so when you're looking at this game or this series and a team in Denver that is heavily favored, how much does playoff and finals experience mean to a team like Miami Heat, who are the big underdogs here? How much does experience matter when it comes to this series?
I think it matters a great deal. I also think coaching experience matters too, with Mike Malone and Coach Spo, both very good coaches. I think that's going to be a really fascinating part of this series because with every series, and every series is different, there's always in-game adjustments, personnel matchup, changes, alterations to your lineups, defensive matchups, your offensive execution, what you're running, getting guys, shots and opportunities, putting the ball in different guys' hands. That's going to be a fascinating part of the series. Now, when you look at the experience from a player's standpoint, this Nuggets team fairly young. Now, Jokic is obviously been an MVP caliber player and been a multi-year MVP over the last 4 or 5 years and has been fantastic in the playoffs. Let's just call it what it is. I think he's been the best player in the playoffs. I think the Nuggets have been the best team in the playoffs in terms of just they really haven't had a blip yet. Mike Malone challenged this team in the regular season, and I think we talk about Coach Spo and his ability to motivate through the media. Mike Malone did this. I want to say it was back in March, like right before we hit April, towards the end of the regular season. I don't think he was happy with how the Nuggets were playing. It looked like they were kind of taking their foot off the gas and just kind of coasting through the end of the regular season, and he really challenged them, and they've turned that around. And this Nuggets team, Jokic is going to get a ton of the praise, and he should, just because he makes so many things happen as a scorer and as a passer, and he just impacts the game in all these ways. But Jamal Murray has been really, really back to Jamal Murray, bubble Jamal Murray, if you will, when they were in the playoffs in 2020. And, he's had, 30, I think he averaged over 30 a game in the Western Conference Finals and shot the ball at such a high level. He was huge in the series against the Lakers. He has to be great in the series for them to win it. It just can't fall on Jokic. I think Nikola Jokic will be fantastic. He's been so consistent. I don't really worry about him. Who matches up with him will be a good question of who's going to be guarding. I would assume it would be Bam right out of the gate, and I think it's going to be a great matchup. But then it comes down to Jamal Murray and his ability to impact the game. Michael Porter Jr. will be a part of this series in a big way. I know that the ears perk up when we talk Michael. He's got to be really good for them too, not just a shot maker. He's got to rebound the ball and be a big piece of them. So it is to your question about youth and about experience. I mean, Jimmy Butler in the playoffs, to me, he's not going to be bothered at all by the moment. We know that. I still think Jimmy Butler late in the game, you need a final shot. Which guy do you feel most comfortable with? Is it Jokic? Is it Jimmy Butler? I still lean Jimmy Butler. So I would not write off this Miami Heat team at all. I just don't think you can. And I know the odds will say different. I know the Nuggets will be the favorite, but I just don't think with what the Miami Heat have done so far. I mean, sweeping the Bucks and sweeping them, in a very easy ho-hum manner. I know injuries were a part of that series, but this Miami Heat team doesn't fear anybody, and I think they have all the confidence in the world that they're going to go beat Denver.
Okay, so when it comes to Jokic and Murray, Here's a couple of interesting stats. Murray became the second player to average 30 points on 50, 40, 90 shooting in multiple playoff series, joining Kevin Durant. And how about this one? Jokic is the third player in league history to average a triple-double in the playoffs entering the finals, joining 1982 Magic Johnson and 1967 Wilt Chamberlain. Right, so that's
he was,
ridiculous.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous. Yeah, he was picked 41st overall, second-round pick.
And we talk about, I think in a previous podcast, we talked about Joel Embiid and the dramatic decrease in points per game that he had from the regular season to the postseason, which was the largest in NBA history for an MVP. Well, the largest career increase in points per game from regular season to playoffs, Jamal Murray's one plus 8.5, and then Jokic is plus 7.1, and this is with a minimum of 20 playoff games. So this two-man game, Murray and Jokic, I mean, I'm looking at an article right now that says it's tempting to call Jokic and Murray, this combo, the best playoff duo we've seen since Kobe and Shaq.
Jeez.
And you say that, and it sounds ridiculous, but then I tell you Jokic is averaging a triple-double going into the finals, and the only two guys that have done that are Magic Johnson and Wilt Chamberlain. And then I tell you what Murray's been doing, averaging 30 points on 50, 40, 90 shooting. The numbers suggest it ain't that crazy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And look, I was listening to podcasts that are current NBA players. So CJ McCollum has a great one. JJ Redick's a former player. He has a great podcast. But I love listening to the players' dynamic of regular season to postseason in the playoffs. And, Jokic is not a guy that probably, it's not a motivating factor publicly that he's, when you listen to Nikola Jokic speak to the media, he's very charismatic. He's very laid back. But him not getting the MVP to me when it went to Joel Embiid, I still think there's something there with Jokic that is like, okay, I'm going to go win a championship now. Like this I got overlooked, and he'll never say it, but I do think, and just some of the my close contacts with the Nuggets organization, I do think he's got a little bit of a different thought process right now in the playoffs, which I think is great.
I like his brothers.
I love his brothers.
Much different. Ready to fight or party or both.
I was gonna say brothers are a little different than Nikola.
Yeah,
they're sitting there picking up Coach Malone and throwing him through the Crypto Center in L.A. after they win.
They picked up Jamal Murray's dad and we're throwing him up in the air after they won the conference finals.
Right. But the point too is like Jokic to me has just taken a next step, because you saw it in the Lakers series when LeBron was guarding him and Rui Hachimura was guarding him, and his scoring, because he was just a bucket. He was an automatic bucket when Anthony Davis was guarding him. I mean, he just kind of carved him up, went to the rim, and just scored at will. And he's done that a lot in the playoffs. But then you look at how he adjusts and his passing. He had 14 assists in the closeout game with the Lakers. He's still rebounding the ball at such a high level, and he's still scoring, but it allows guys like Michael Porter, Aaron Gordon to step up and play off of him and have more opportunities, because those role players have to be able to finish and have to be able to be productive, because so much attention is going to be on Jamal and going to be on Jokic. Especially in their two-man game, or if isolating Jokic on the block or on the perimeter, he's going to see a lot of different defenses, and your role players got to step up and be big in the series. And it's not just Jamal. It's Aaron Gordon. It's Michael Porter. Those guys got to play well. And then also Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, I think, has been very good. He was a great acquisition for this Nuggets team. He's a great shooter. He can really attack the rim. So that's what, to me, makes the Nuggets scary, is the fact that Jokic is playing at such a high level, but all these other guys are really contributing when they need to. And that's what makes a great team go. And that's why this Nuggets team, yes, Jokic is the focal point, but it's also everything around Jokic that has really carried this team, and it's why they're so tough to guard and they're such a tough out. That is the challenge for the Miami Heat. But if there's one team that can make you uncomfortable, and one team that can bring a level of physicality, like old school, if you will, like we follow, the NBA, we talk about the Last Dance, the 90s. To me, the Miami Heat have some old schoolness to them of being the more physical, more tougher team. That, to me, wins the finals this year, is who is the tougher team.
So, with Denver, the local ties of Michael Porter Jr. and Christian Brown makes it easier to root for them. And look, and Jokic, I mean, how could you not appreciate what he's doing? They're Jamal Murray when he's out there, fabulous team to watch, right? But I made this comment on my show earlier today. It would be so cool to be an actual Miami Heat fan.
Right.
Because of what you're talking about, because of the way Jimmy Butler plays, because of the construction of the roster. When you have, 3 undrafted free agents that are starters, so many guys in the rotation that were afterthoughts when it came to the NBA draft, that weren't supposed to even be in the NBA, much less star in the NBA. And right at the top of the list is Caleb Martin.
Mm-hmm.
And let's talk about the series he had and maybe what type of impact he's going to have in the finals. It was a toss-up over who would be named the MVP of the Eastern Conference Finals. The media vote was 5-4 in favor of Jimmy Buckets. We talk about playoff Jimmy, but Caleb Martin was right there. And, some people thought that he should have got the nod. And I'm looking at most efficient jump shooters in the playoffs this year. Derek White, points per shot on jumpers, 1.37 Derek White. Caleb Martin, 1.36, ahead of Booker, ahead of Jamal Murray, ahead of Austin Reeves. He's been incredible. And, you have a Hall of Fame coach. You have a tough team that's actually a team made up of a bunch of guys that weren't supposed to be as good as they are. And I would love to be like, hey, I like watching the Heat, but I'm not a Miami guy.
Right.
Like, everybody wants to be a Mahomes Chiefs fan. We're Chiefs fan. We're from Kansas City. You can't get on our bandwagon. But like for the Miami Heat, I love what they are.
Yeah.
And how they play. You wonder, like, how in the hell were they only an 8 seed? But still, now what they've done and what they've shown, it gives you more. Like sometimes the NBA is accused it's a stars league, right? Mm-hmm. This gives you, I think, something to watch when you love the team effort. Like you said, toughness, and maybe the team aspect of what we love about college basketball. It just seems like one of these teams you fall in love with, the NCAA tournament that runs all the way to the Final Four, right?
Yep.
And so tell me about Caleb Martin, because I think he's a great example of what this organization produces.
Yeah. So, I mean, Caleb Martin is just a terrific story of really going through and doing it the hard way. So you're talking about a guy that wasn't heavily recruited at high school, starts at NC State and is there for 2 years, transfers, has to sit out a year, goes to Nevada. He was Mountain West Player of the Year. So it wasn't like he was someone that was overlooked. He was a very good player. His draft class was a solid draft. He goes undrafted. I believe he signs an E10 with Charlotte. And an E10, it's basically a training camp invite. You're playing in summer league. You're probably going to be in the G League, obviously. And he ended up going to Greensboro with the Swarm. And that's where it starts and ends up getting waived. And the Miami Heat, this is where scouting comes into play and the impact and the importance of scouting.
You got J. Cole making phone calls.
J. Cole making phone calls to coaches. And, you need every player needs an opportunity to try to make it. And depending on where that opportunity is and where you're going and where you fit, so much, the word fit can be overused, but Caleb is a great fit in Miami. He's a guy that's a very smart player. He's got positional size. He's not the greatest athlete. He's not the strongest player. He wasn't the most skilled coming out. He's gotten better and better and better, and he's gone through the development program. He's accepted and embraced who he is. He has a level of self-awareness, and he's willing to take coaching, and he's improved his game. He has played every role you can think of. And then when the moment was the biggest moment, he got that opportunity, made the most of it, and I think it all stems back from his entire process and journey to get to where he's at, dating back to college, dating back to high school, going through, getting waived and cut. He had to sign an E10 and a two-way. Now he re-signed last summer on a 3-year deal, and I'm sure the Miami Heat see him as a much bigger piece than he probably even sees himself. But he was great in this series. He outplayed Jaylen Brown. Their numbers look similar in terms of production, but the efficiency that you touch on, the efficiency is not even close, and just how efficient Caleb Martin was. Limited shots, making shots, being ready for the moment, not taking bad shots. Again, the IQ piece, understanding how to play. And this is where I think Coach Spo does such a great job. You have to have guys that buy into their role, that listen to coaching, that embrace who they are, that know how to play, that know how to play off of Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. And that's why Caleb was so great in this series, and he's been consistent for the most part throughout the playoffs, and especially with Tyler Hero being out. Caleb has stepped up into that moment, and I'm sure Tyler Hero's looking at it going, man, right now Caleb's in my role, and he's playing well in that role, and that's all you need is an opportunity.
Is it – look, you want Tyler Hero to be healthy, and you want him back in the rotation, but is it going to be hard to just drop him in and try to figure, like you're talking about this, to figure out the rotation and drop him in? They're not going to say no to that kind of talent if he's healthy, but that's not going to be easy, right?
Right. No, this is very similar to, I equate it to us in New Orleans of just we had so many guys out this year that Jose Alvarado, Najee Marshall were starting for us at different times. And Najee at different times has been the 8th, 9th guy off the bench. And then he's starting and he's averaging 15, 16 points. And then everybody comes back and he goes back to his role. So it's definitely a mind, like a challenge mentally to have to kind of, you're pulled in different directions. And you just got to be willing to embrace whatever's going to be asked of you. And if you can play in a more advanced role, that's great from a development standpoint. But with guys coming back, there's only so it's kind of the phrase that always goes around. There's only one basketball to go around.
Right, and what to do defensively.
Right. And your stars are going to get you through the series. Like, you have to have Jimmy play well. You have to have Bam play well. But the other guys do have to step up. So I think it mostly helps Caleb be ready for anything that's asked. And I do think from just his future trajectory, he becomes that much more valuable because he will always be able to start, come off the bench, be a key reserve, be a rotation player. Whatever you need him to do, he'll be ready and be able to play in different roles. And that versatility with that level of efficiency, that's what you want in a player, especially in the playoffs when you're getting ready to go to the finals.
Okay, so I was talking with Matt Moore from the Action Network on my morning show earlier today, and I respect his opinion a lot. And I was asking him about this matchup between the Heat and the Nuggets, and he just said he can't get past the idea that Jokic, Bam Adebayo is such a god-awful matchup for Miami. There's nothing that Bam has for Jokic. And look, that's nothing. I mean, who does have anything? The guy is averaging a triple-double, right. But he said this is such a bad matchup that he can't find a path to victory for Miami. So if you're Miami, what do you do?
Yeah.
What the hell do you do here?
Yeah, I think number one, you got to throw different doubles in different ways. You have to give Jokic different looks, but ultimately, if you're going to try to get the ball out of his hands and you're going to double or trap or whatever, whenever he puts the ball on the floor, if you're coming from the weak side, your backline defense has to be great because that's where Jokic can pick you apart. His vision is so elite and he can see 2 steps ahead, and that's all you need. And if a defender falls asleep or turns his head or isn't in the right spot or isn't rotating down or crashing down or rotating out to the perimeter, it's an automatic bucket because he's such a great passer. And he's very unselfish. He doesn't care if he's scoring or passing. He just impacts the offense that much. I would start with Bam, actually. I want to see if Bam can do it because I think Bam will take on a challenge. Now, look, to your point, Jokic has carved up the most NBA centers in these playoffs. Anthony Davis for one, but so but then you start getting creative. Do you switch it up? Do you go with Caleb? Do you switch it up and go small? Do you is it something where you're looking at Jimmy, switching up and guarding Jokic? That could be an option too. So you're going to probably have to get creative throughout the series. But at the end of the day, it also comes down to guarding everybody else that's on the floor. The Jamal Murray, the Aaron Gordon, the Michael Porter, the Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. You're going to have to block them down as well and be in position to defend those guys. And that's what makes this series and just the NBA in general is the skill set in this league right now, the talent level is so high that everybody that's on this floor can play. And you got to guard everybody. And Jokic is the focal point of the defensive game plan. That will change throughout. And look, there's a lot of undrafted guys. If like to what we said earlier, if you're just putting these rosters side by side, Denver's got more talent for sure. But I just think some of these guys could impact a game. Duncan Robinson, Max Strus, Gabe Vincent. Gabe's had some big games. They can go up. Kyle Lowry's a little bit up and down, but Kyle Lowry's had some big moments in the playoffs as well. And he's very much to our comments earlier. He's experienced. He's that veteran that can play. So there's a lot of different things that could happen in this series. We'll see what Spo does, because I think game one will tell a lot to Coach Spo of where to make the adjustment. Is it someone, you're changing up your personnel to guard Jokic? That to me is the biggest part of this series of how right now the Miami Heat can get through this, guarding Jokic and making him a little bit uncomfortable and disrupt a little bit of what Denver does offensively.
All right, take us through who will win the NBA Finals in how many games, and who will be the Finals MVP.
So I think I'm going to go the Nuggets in 6 right now. And, I want to give it, the MVP to Jokic. I think it probably will. But I kind of want to, for podcast purposes, I'm going to go with Jamal Murray, actually.
I thought you see Michael Porter Jr.
I know.
Throw the microphone across the studio.
I think Jamal Murray, because the way I look at the series, I think Miami's going to do everything to make Jokic a passer, to take away scoring, and Jokic is still going to score. So I think Jamal Murray could have that. If he does anything like he did in the Western Conference Finals, where he's scoring 30 and shooting 60, and they win the series, I think Jamal Murray has a chance to be in this Finals MVP conversation. But it's probably Jokic. But I do think it depends on how this series kind of flows, and game flow, and late in the game. If they're trying to get the ball out of Jokic's hand, I think it's going to be Jamal Murray that steps up and is that guy, just like he was in the playoffs in 2020.
So all kidding aside, like for the local guys that we're going to have us interested, do you think Christian Brown sees minutes in this Finals? And we know Michael Porter Jr. will. What do you think his role is going to be in this Finals if the Nuggets do indeed win? Tell me what your expectations are for MPJ.
Yeah, so, Michael's a huge part of the series because of his size, because of his shooting. And I think what we saw in the Lakers series, his ability to go rebound the ball. He had good games where he's on the glass. And, I think Michael, he's finally found how to play without the ball, because let's face it, in high school and college, the ball's going through him, right? He's the focal point of any team he's been on, dating back to his AAU days. And, playing with Jokic, I think it took him a little bit to play without the ball and being more of a spot-up guy, more of a cutter. That's different for Michael, and I think it's a challenge that he had early on in his career. And he was such, I can say he was such a liability defensively when he got into the NBA. And he's now, I think, learned and understand he can't be, so bad defensively, and he's been better, and he's gotten so much better in terms of his rotations and knowing where the ball's at, seeing man and ball, being able to move as the ball moves, not being late to his assignment and coverage, and just being more of an impact with his size, and not, being able to maintain the ball a little bit more too. But rebounding to me is the biggest thing for Michael. He's got to be on the glass to help in this series, because that's been a big help for the Nuggets throughout the playoffs, is not just depending so much on Jokic to rebound the ball, Aaron Gordon. Michael's been there to be able to be on the glass, and I think that's been a big help to this series. For Christian, had some DNPs obviously in the Western Conference Finals. He's just got to be ready. It would not surprise me at all if Miami gets some rhythm and they're playing well and they're shooting the ball well, and it's tough for the Nuggets to match up with Jimmy or Bam, or these undrafted guys are stepping up like Caleb or like Max and Duncan coming off the bench at threes. Christian Brown absolutely could be used in the series, and he's got to be ready, because defensive-minded players, they found if you need that, they're going to play in the playoffs. And Christian's earned that. He's been one of the best rookie defenders in the NBA, and he's had such a great rookie year, and he's had great moments in the playoffs. But it would not shock me at all if he gets put in this game because of his tenacity, his toughness. He's going to be fearless. He's not going to be afraid of the moment. I know that for a fact. And that's something that really helps Christian have a chance to get on the floor in the series. And can you imagine if that was the case? And Christian's won state championships. He's won an NCAA national championship. To now be in the finals with a chance to win an NBA championship, that's pretty impressive, of just the winning piece of it. Christian Brown's been there many of times, and that's going to make this series a lot of fun for him.
Do you think there's any chance that Jimmy Butler will once again challenge Jokic to a fight by telling him to bring your ass to the back? Could that happen?
Well, and like Jokic's brothers will be in the back too.
Right.
It'll just be a full-on. It could be really interesting what could happen there. But I wouldn't
want to fight anyone that you just mentioned. Any of the Jokic brothers.
I wouldn't either. Yeah.
Jokic,
no thanks.
Jimmy Butler. I want them to all just be happy.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to mess with Bam Adebayo either. No thanks.
Right.
No, I wouldn't want to.
But there was some bad blood
for
there,
sure. I think.
And now you got the final. So I'm not saying they're gonna once again. Jimmy Butler may or may not challenge him to fight out back. But, I mean, there was bad blood there. This is going to be a super intense finals, I think.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought it up because I think it's something that's not talked about a lot. Like, this team did have some bad blood throughout the regular season. I think Aaron Gordon was a little bit a part of this, back and forth. Well, we've talked about this before. There's some past experiences with these guys on maybe different teams that comes into play here. So yeah, it is definitely a talking point. I know the players will downplay it, and but once you get in the heat of competition, maybe some things get said. Those things can come back quite quickly to make this even more intriguing than it is. But yeah, I would just say too, going into the finals, and you said it earlier. This is probably more me just kind of venting, but I know odds and the betting line and what's the spread and the Heat or the 8 seed. This isn't going to be a series. To me, this is very much going to be a series. I'd be shocked if this was like 3-0 in some. I think it'll be pretty balanced. I do have the Nuggets in 6 right now. Could easily see it going 7, and obviously from a just league standpoint, I would love to see it go 7.
Game 7.
I know. I would love to see a game 7.
Let's do that.
Yeah. So it's going to be a fun series, and it's just cool to see also like 2 teams that haven't really been here, like Spo has, but Nuggets really haven't. And that to me is what makes this great for the league. Is it's 2 teams that, we can get behind, and it's going to be make it exciting.
I'm a contrarian. I did not want anything to do with another Lakers and Celtics. So I'm all in on Heat and Nuggets.
Yep.
And so that is your preview of the NBA Finals. And again, Charlie Hustle, that's the place to go to get all the gear, right?
Get there. I'm telling you, that's best gear in town. Support your local schools, support your local teams. Great, company here in Kansas City, local company here that does such great work here in Kansas City, and we couldn't be more grateful to have them as our sponsor.
That's right. Go to charliehustle.com for more information. And until next episode, don't forget, Kansas City is for hustlers.